Another week of growing with my fellow growers. I'm at Jack Greenstock on Instagram as well as Cannabuzz and at Jack_Greenstock on Twitter. You can also find me weekly as the host of this show. I'm with a lovely panel as always, and I'm just waiting for the video to pop up on YouTube on my end so I can mute myself. And I'm going to pass it over first to Aaron the Grower. How's it going, Aaron?
What is up? Good to be back. Been busy for me. I'm Aaron the Grower, ATG Acres on Instagram, atgacres.com, and ATG Acres on YouTube. It's good to see everybody. Oh, yo, and also the inventor of Plant Packer. Good to be back.
Always a pleasure to have you. Welcome back. Next up, we've got Spartan Grown.
What's up, everybody? I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, or you could shoot me an email, spartangrown@gmail.com. I'm a home grower. I'm all organic, and at work, I'm a synthetic grower, so I can hopefully answer your questions if you have them.
Cheers, Spartan Grown. Thank you so much for joining us. I forgot to shout out my email. If anybody who doesn't have social media that chooses to listen to the show, you can also reach me at jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. So definitely good to put that out there for the people that aren't on social media. Primarily, I use Instagram, but I know a lot of people are not on there. So definitely good to have an option to allow people to check us out and get in contact with us on a separate way. But the next person I will go ahead and introduce is Kyle Breeder. Welcome, Kyle.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. My name is Kyle. I specialize in feminized seeds. Actually, currently in the process of spraying now. I'm starting to see male traits, so that's a good sign. But if anybody's looking for feminized seeds, first of all, I have a website you can find at the letter P followed by breeding.com. And you can check me out on any social media platform, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Predicated Breeding. And glad to be here. I'm glad everyone's safe and here.
We're happy to have you back. I would say if you do have an option to move somewhere with a little bit better connection, you were a little bit robotic there. It's kind of chopping. I could hear everything you said, but it was just kind of like a pixelated photo version of audio, if that makes any sense. But next up, we got the American one.
Hello, Jack and panel, everyone in chat. I'm the American one. You can find me on YouTube at the American one and IG the American one _with_18s. And it's good to be here.
Good to have you back. I want to remind everyone to click on over to that live chat if you are here with us now. It looks like we've already got 25 and growing in numbers. So make sure to click on that live chat so you can get all the comments and a greater chat experience. I'll pass it over next to Matthew Gates, who typically will remind you to do that, but I stole his thunder there a little bit.
Yeah, this is Matthew Gates. I'm an integrated pest management specialist. I've been doing this for about 10 years, and I'm very excited, as always, to talk with the panel about various topics. We often do talk about IPM here, so if you have any IPM questions, you can ask them in the chat, and I will also interact in the chat as well. You can find my content about integrated pest management, especially about cannabis, in many places. My YouTube channel is Zenthanol, as well as on my Instagram account, SyncAngel, as well as on Twitter, which is also at SyncAngel.
Thank you so much again for joining us, Matthew. Definitely love all the information that you put out there for the people. Next up, we have Dr. Mj Coco.
Hey guys, Dr. Mj Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. A couple of fun things. We have the strain review giveaway coming up this week. Write a strain review and get entered for the Grower's Choice ROIE 720 that we're giving away this week. And the Spring Autoflower Challenge, it's only 3 weeks until 420, and Spring Autoflower Challenge starts on 420, so sign up for that too. I'm excited for the show. I'm excited to actually be here on time this week. So thanks, Jack. Thanks, panel. Let's do it.
All right, Doc, good to have you back. I know that you've been doing a lot with the grow light testing, and I actually thought it's been maybe about a month or so plus since we've actually had a lighting episode or topic where we kind of dove deeper into the lighting subject. So I was curious if you have any new lights that you've tested recently that you are excited about in seeing more out there in the community. I know that you've got a few light giveaways and things going on throughout this year as well. But I'm curious if you have any new thoughts or perspective from going through all these tests over the past, 6 or 8 months or so since you've started reviewing.
Yeah, it's been an interesting experience. Thanks for asking. A couple of interesting new fixtures. I've just been testing over the weekend the new Photon Tech XT1000 CO2 fixture that is sort of the first fixture designed to go into sealed rooms and do sort of that ultra high PPFD for carbon dioxide enriched spaces. So that's been interesting. I don't think that's a light that too many growers will be able to, too many of our audience will be able to take advantage of, but it's sort of pushing it one of the directions that LEDs haven't really been able to go in yet. So it's been interesting to play around with it.
What are some of the readings at the canopy? Is it getting up to that 1500 ppfd levels, or is it going higher than that? And what CO2?
It certainly can go higher than that. Yeah, it's up at 1500. I mean, I set it for the 1500 test. Hold on, let me find the sheet here, and I'll tell you what the hanging height on that was. But it's a really powerful light. It also pulled about 2.4 on the efficiency. So 52 centimeters above the sensor, which is pretty high. It had 1500 maximum PPFD in the center of a 5x5 test. And it was up in the mid 700s all the way out in the corners. The edges were at like 1000. So yeah, that's a whole hell of a lot of light.
What's the wattage draw on that particular unit?
Just over 1000. So that's 1013 watts. Pulling at 2.4 micromoles per watt, it's generating almost 2,500 micromoles to the canopy, which is just insane. So I tested it to be like normal PPFD densities at 1,000, and that required me dimming it to 75% and raising it to 67 centimeters. So like it's almost as high as my walls are in my testing rig. But I also did a cool test where I took out 2 bars. You can take out and run it with fewer than all of the bars. So I did an 8-bar test. And that was really interesting. So I don't know, I've just been having a lot of fun sort of playing around with it and thinking about the different things you could do. Since you can take out the bars, you can put this in a smaller space. And so it's fun to think about sort of different patterns to the distribution, which is sort of the other big thing that a lot of manufacturers are playing with. My last video that I published was on the Geek Beast, which plays around with sort of distributing the diodes in a different way. I have an atrium light that does something similar to that, moves the diodes out towards the edges of a quantum board style fixture, instead of having them sort of spread all around. So it's interesting to see what the manufacturers are doing with those kinds of ideas.
My thought, I have a question for you on your grow light calculator on cocoforcannabis.com. Part of that is you have I believe it's called like the estimated yield or something similar to that. I could be paraphrasing.
Now, we have a benchmark harvest estimate and low harvest estimate.
So with that, just from some of the work I've been doing in the industry and consulting in Canada and here in California, a lot of the people that are pushing what I'd consider like the higher end of the performance side it used to be like the 3 pounds per 1,000 watt of light. And now people are actually pushing and getting 4 pounds per 1,000 watts of light. And I'm curious where with that light at being 2.4 efficiency and pulling over 1,000 watts, but let's call it 1,000 watts per, it's 1,013. It's like pretty much 1,000 and you could dim it to 1,000 exactly.
This is an interesting question because part of the way that we're calculating that yield is based on experience with HPS lights and sort of based on the experience of the old gram per watt rule. So that benchmark harvest potential that we calculate is basically equivalent to what an HPS grower would get at a gram per watt rate, if you follow. So the Photon Tech fixture is designed for carbon dioxide supplementation. So it wouldn't be just the same sort of micromole to yield ratio. So we can calculate per micromole. A good grower, can get about 0.65 grams per micromole. And so if you have a fixture like this one that comes out with 2,500 micromoles, hold hold on while my computer pulls up its calculator. So if we have 2,500 calculator, or sorry, micromoles times like 0.65 grams per micromole. So that would be 1625 grams per harvest on that.
That's really fucking good. I mean, that's over 3 pounds, because 3 pounds is 454 times 3, which is 1,362 grams, or like
Yeah.
1.36 grams per watt, which a lot of people have kind of set as their standard off of 1,000 watts of HPS or whatever
Yeah,
lighting that they're
exactly.
using. And to hear that it's within your benchmarks, it makes sense that now they're pushing more towards that 4 pounds per light as a possibility, not
Yeah,
as a
and you know, the other side
guideline.
of this though is it should be more efficient. I mean, that's the whole idea behind running carbon dioxide, is that you should get a better return per micromole than you do without carbon dioxide. And you know, 0.65 is actually fairly conservative. I certainly see growers hit 3/4 of a gram per micromole, and under CO2 enrichment, you could get higher than that. So it
4
depends on
pounds
who's
would
doing the
be
grow though. The pushback I always get on those harvest calculations is like, oh, it depends on the strain or it depends on the grower and all of that. I'm like, yeah, of course it does. I'm not saying
Right,
that you're
of course.
going to harvest
In the
that
veg
much, it's just
time.
that you could.
I think that the real beauty of a system where you have a calculator like that is that it's like supposed to be super conservative. It's supposed to take the low margin,
Yeah.
so you can feel pretty
have a
safe
range.
about that. Yeah, exactly. And you
Yeah.
can go up from there. And then I was also going to ask, you might have already touched on this, but I'm just curious, and maybe Jack already asked this question partly, but what would you say is like, if this is considered like kind of high end in a lot of nice ways, what would you say is like average, and what would you say is like below average for a wattage pool per micromole rate? And like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
These days you can get fixtures that run like 2.2 to 2.4 at a pretty reasonable cost. We're talking like 60 to 70 cents per micromole. So those are like high-end efficiencies. That's pretty much the top of the market. So you don't need to spend a ton of money. Like you don't need to spend $1 per micromole anymore. And there still are certainly fixtures that cost that much.
Well, and
But-
the HPS for comparison is like a 1.3 to 1.7. Double-endeds
Exactly.
can get like close to the lower ends of 2.0, but it's like high ones still.
And 1.7, man, that would be a double-ended 1,000-watt HPS in a pretty big space. So
Just for
you're
my
not getting that on
edification,
your closet grow.
just for my own edification, could you use the units there so I can follow a little bit better?
Which
The numbers you just said, you didn't use any units, so I wasn't sure.
Like
1,000-watt
PP,
HPS? Sorry.
So no. So like 2.2 micromoles.
Oh,
you meant.
micromoles per watt or micromoles
watt,
per
right.
joule. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're thinking about, it starts with the electricity at the wall, and it's sort of how many watts come out of the wall, and then they go into the driver, and then the driver, transforms the power into the fixture, and then light comes out of the fixture. So we measure fixtures based on how many watts they pull out of the wall versus how many micromoles come out of the fixture. And that number that's often quoted, it's usually about, 1 point something or 2 point something, is that it's the number of micromoles per watt that the fixture will produce. And it basically describes the efficiency of the fixture.
Excellent. So you're saying that, and just so that I know, and sort of really close to that great explanation, you're saying like 2 point something is average, or 1 point something?
Well, 2.4, you can get fixtures that's sort of the top of the market right now, but you can get those fixtures at pretty reasonable prices. And then, two things that are well below 2. Now, in a smaller space, it's hard to hit those numbers. So if you're getting a 2x2 light, then you're probably going to be like 1.8, 1.9, or 2. Some of them get up to 2. But it's hard to hit sort of the economies of scale, basically, in such a small space. So they're going to be slightly less efficient.
That makes sense.
And then there's, you could save a little bit of money by getting a less efficient LED, but the competition's pretty tight now. Everything for 4x4 fixtures and above, I wouldn't I wouldn't consider anything that gets less than 2 micromoles per watt. I wouldn't be able to recommend that, certainly.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate having like a rubric like that, just as like a very helpful baseline.
No, the other thing about that, though, is a lot of growers just pay too much attention to that specific number, which is just the efficiency of the light. It's like we brought this up briefly last week, I think. It's like the gas mileage of a car. It describes sort of how efficient the system is in translating sort of potential energy into its product. But there's other things with the light that may be important. The way it distributes the light across the canopy is different for different fixtures. So squeezing all the light into the middle and having poor edges, that's a way to sort of boost up the efficiency, but it doesn't really make it a better light. It would be better to have light that's more evenly distributed across the canopy. So really
so I want to jump in just for a second there, because it seems like, in my opinion, and that's just what it is, so I'm going to throw that out there, this is my opinion, those seem like the two big metrics, other than maybe number 3 being cost, but the efficiency and how well it distributes the light. So it's like, if we're going to go back to the car reference, like you've got your miles per gallon, and then sort of like maybe how the car handles, or something else that really matters a lot to you, or how fast it can go, or something like that. Whatever you're actually buying it for in that case. I think certain people, like if you need a minivan,
the equivalent really would be almost like horsepower or something.
Maybe how many gears it has.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. But whatever the second biggest factor is, other than like efficiency for you, if that's what you're buying it on.
The raw power of the light is important because it's going to determine how much space it can cover. And you don't learn anything about sort of how big the light is when we talk about those efficiency numbers. You can be talking about a tiny little light that gets 2.0, or you could be talking about a great big giant light that gets 2.0. Not going to be equivalent lights by any stretch of the imagination.
That's where the PPF comes in, right? The total amount of light that the fixture puts off is the PPF.
Exactly. And the PPF would be equivalent to like the horsepower in a car.
Yeah, and so that, for people who sometimes might be confused, because you see PPF, which is like the total, it'll say like 1,350 micromoles is what it puts out. Like that's the total number of lumens or PPF that is put out by the fixture. But then you might see PPFD per watt, or micromoles per joule, and that's like and then if you see PPFD, it might be confusing because you see PPFD and PPF. The PPF is the total, PPFD is the like average. So
it's the density. The D stands for density. So my favorite analogy for this now is my cake analogy that I've come up with. So imagine your grow light is a jar of frosting, and your plants, the canopy of your plants, is a cake. Okay, so when we're talking about, there's a couple of things that you need to be aware of. The size of the jar of frosting is important. Like how much frosting you have is going to determine how sort of thick you can spread the frosting on the cake, right? Now, if you have a tiny little jar of frosting and a great big giant cake, you're going to get a very thin layer of frosting. If you have a big jar of frosting and a little cake, you'll suffocate the cake with frosting. The thickness of the frosting on the cake is the equivalent of PPFD. Okay, that's the density that the light is sort of spread around the canopy, or that the frosting is spread around the cake. The PPF is like the size of the jar of frosting that you're starting with. Okay, so there's a relationship between sort of how big the jar is and how thick the frosting is going to be on the cake, but it's not, there's other things going on there, like how big is the canopy? So a little jar of frosting and a little canopy, you can end up with perfect density frosting or perfect density light. If you have a bigger cake, you need sort of a bigger jar of frosting. But just talking about the thickness of the frosting at like one place, which is what a lot of manufacturers do. They just talk about PPFD. They just talk about like one thickness measurement. That doesn't tell you how much frosting you have. It doesn't tell you actually anything at all, other than
a dry ass corner or edge.
If the middle gets all the frosting, it's only
exactly.
one good slice of cake in the whole thing. Right.
Exactly.
That's exactly it. Or even one bad slice because it's so sweet. It's got too much frosting. It's too intense. There's too much
And
intensity in
that's
that one
bad for your
spot. It's not even
plants.
usable. Exactly.
So you
I
want
wonder-
a cake with a nice even spread of frosting. Now we all know there's going to be a little bit more frosting in the middle than there are on the edges because of the way sort of light works. But that's what we're sort of playing with here. And when you're thinking about light, you need to think both about sort of the size of the jar of frosting and the spread of the frosting across the canopy. And that's PPF and PPFD.
I
Listen,
wonder
if
how
I
many
was
particles of frosting a cultivator has to apply every day to make.
Yes, and now
It's your daily
everybody's
frosting
going off to
integral.
get cake and frosting.
Yeah.
Get
DLI.
some ice cream too while you're at it. But hopefully
Yeah.
that's a helpful analogy.
There
I've
you
been
go.
searching around for a good analogy about density for a while, and the cake frosting analogy I think I'm running with now.
I
It
like
works for
that.
sure. Tao had something to say. I want to let him get in
I
there.
was just gonna say, like, first I was gonna ask Doc, when is it gonna be like half $1 per watt with the 2 joule watt equivalency? So basically, at $500 for a really good 1,000 watt LED. Is that ever gonna happen? And
I mean, I recently reviewed a light that was sort of is a crazy good deal. It was in the 30s, 30 cents per micromole.
all right, because
Ooh.
I was gonna say, when I'm gonna go get a light, I'm gonna go right to the Coco for Cannabis website and go through a bunch of those, because that lays it all out, and that covers everything. It covers the canopy, you know, like
Yeah.
so many
I literally
factors
have a call
involved.
with
So,
Doc this week
yeah.
about setting up
You
the
know?
lights. I switched that Oklahoma grow to indoor, so we're setting up an indoor facility now. So I literally have a call with Doc. I don't know, whenever you want to do it. I think I sent you a message about Tuesday.
Yeah, we
so
were
you
just
let me
chatting
know.
on IG.
Yeah. Gotta
Yeah,
know,
I'm happy to chat about that. And a couple of weeks ago, some people were giving me flack about talking about grow lights and not talking about sort of my affiliate relationships. I don't know. I've never once mentioned any sort of discount codes or anything like that. When I'm talking to you guys about grow lights, I'm not sitting here trying to make money off of these deals. I'm just giving my honest opinions about them. Nobody
You bring it
pays
up in
me.
your articles.
Yeah, nobody pays me just to talk about their lights. I do get paid when people use my discount codes, and whenever I share the discount codes, I make sure to include disclaimers with that. So I just put that out there since it has come up in the past.
Yeah, I always thought that those were sort of uninformed comments.
Yeah,
Because
it would be
of that
different if
exact
somebody
reason.
was paying me to be a rep and saying like, hey, go on the show and talk about how great our lights are. Nobody does that. I only make money on affiliate deals, and I only make money through the discount codes basically. So
And you definitely levy the sledgehammer when like people like don't like when they don't do very well, like when the lights aren't good, like you're gonna say that. You know what I mean? Like
I
I'm sure
literally
there's-
levied the hammer on the geek beast.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you, Doc.
If you guys see, yeah, I break that light apart. It was a funny one. The Geek Beast, once you snap the thing together, you can't easily take it apart. And so I called them and asked them about it. And they said, you have to use a hammer. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm filming that and I'm going to include it in my video.
That was funny for sure. Very entertaining. I wanted to go back a little bit. Smiley's Garden in the chat made a comment that plants photosynthesize more efficiently at lower levels of light. He sent me a video that Bruce Bugby talked to a person who shared some information on YouTube. But
Yes.
they were looking at low light wanting plants. And then when they looked at the plants that liked higher light levels, there was actually less of that issue. And also they weren't looking at CO2 supplementation, to my knowledge. If I might have to rewatch the video, but I
Yeah,
don't remember them
well-
talking about CO2 supplementation. And I just also, I'll pass it over to you, Doc.
Plants do use light more efficiently at lower levels.
Temperature, right?
Well, just sort of the photosynthetic everything. When you're not kind of pushing at any limits, you're going to do things more efficiently. So like if you, and this is why we try to hit 500 micromoles per square meter with like a minimum density in our gardens. And if you could choose to like add light to someplace where it was 400 or add light to someplace where it was 700, it would be much more efficient to add it where it was 400 because of this exact point. Plants use light more efficiently at lower densities. So adding that light to an area where it's lower density already is more efficient than sort of adding it where it's already higher density. Does that make sense?
Well, it does.
Absolutely.
Would you say, is it kind of like, this is a weird metaphor, but since I've been doing a lot of data backup, it's on my mind. Is it kind of like the read-write limitations of a hard drive disk when you're transferring it through like USB 3.0 or something, wherein that like it doesn't matter.
Well, I don't know what the rewrite limitations of a hard drive disk are when you're transferring it through USB 3.0.
So what I mean is just that like for example, I have this sort of just an HDD here, and if even if I can go like ludicrous speeds with the 3.0, if I had like a solid state drive, for example, or if I had something that can actually make use of that function, I guess what I'm trying to get
right,
at,
yeah, you're hitting some other limit.
yeah, the sort of the like the Liebig's law of minimums kind of thing, but with light.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of things like that. Even the diodes themselves in the LED lamps, for example, are more efficient at lower wattages. When you start cranking them up at higher wattages, you get fewer micromoles per watt. The same thing is essentially true on the other end of the system where the plant receives light. When it's only getting a little bit of light, it will use every little sort of last bit of it. As it gets more and more density light, some of that light's not going to be put to maximum use.
Yeah, I wonder if I mean, I think we've already talked about this a few times, but I guess it makes sense that at a certain point, lights might get you already said the competition is pretty tight, and I'm sure that'll increase. But it sounds like at a certain point, it'll matter more about like where you live and how much electricity costs, kind of.
Yeah.
That'll always matter, but he followed up, Spartan Grown's showing us a little nug there. It looks pretty good. But he said at similar DLI number, the longer day with less PPFD is more efficient for the plant than a shorter day with a higher PPFD.
Yes, absolutely.
So, I mean, I run the 1113. I know that would be counter to that argument because you'd rather run a 1212 or a 1311 if you're possible. Like I have a far red flowering initiator, so I could run a 13-hour day of flower and have it still work. But that would just be counterintuitive to the 1212 versus 1113 for anyone running the 1113.
Well, it depends on how intense the light is, though.
The light intensity does matter, but like they're just talking about, if it can use the photosynthesis more efficiently over a longer period at less intensity, then it's going to be basically easier on the plant for it to like take in the same number of photons over a longer time.
Right, but there is no number of photon limit, Jack. So you could just have the higher intensity for the longer day length too. Unless there's a day length limit, there is no separate DLI limit. So the only reason that we're really thinking in terms of DLI is just to be able to compare photons per photons.
The other thing I wanted to mention was this study was looking at like biomass yields of lettuce and other things that were like low light, and it was biomass yields purely. So unless you're growing like hemp for biomass, where you're just looking for like pure kilos and weight, like if you're growing cannabis flower for the maximum yield of your nugs, which most like a lot of people are, you can use the biomass. Obviously, you can make hash and edibles and other things.
Well, that's the thing.
Most growers aren't actually interested in biomass.
Most growers are interested in sort of maximizing the returns to their grow, not necessarily maximizing the returns to their light or to their electricity use, or to maximize those kinds of efficiencies. What you would be talking about there is essentially like, instead of doing 18.6 at high PPFD, you could do 18.6 at lower PPFD. But most of us that want to go to long day length are doing that because we just want to deliver more total photons to the plant. So there wouldn't be a reason to lower the PPFD when you increase the day length, unless you were really just geared towards efficiency. Maximizing returns to the electricity. But again, most of us are more concerned with maximizing the returns to the grow, because there's so many other costs in the grow, like labor, for example. So even a commercial operation isn't going to be as sort of keenly focused just on the returns to electricity.
There's also,
I imagine that might be cultivar related too, like we were saying earlier.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also another factor is like, depending on where you're at temperature wise, like Matthew was talking about, not just for efficiency of photosynthesis, but for temperature. Some people are going to want to run 24-hour on in veg because if it's cold, it's easier than like running a heater during a dark cycle. It makes more sense for them to just keep the light on 24 hours of the day to keep a more consistent temperature for the plants. So there are some other factors that need to be considered as well. Cannabis flower, does anyone... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I like that perspective.
I do hear that again. I will. One thing I will say about that is lights aren't a terribly efficient heater. I hear a lot of like HPS growers being like, "Oh, but I need the heat too." It's like, okay, it's still not a terribly efficient sort of use of electricity to be using the light bulbs for heat. Sometimes it becomes convenient, but if you're finding yourself consistently needing like extra heat, it might be wise to invest in an actual heater.
And an efficient one at that.
Yeah.
Especially from a sustainability perspective, which we like to talk about a lot. So
The other thing that I'll just throw in before we wrap it up, because Spartan sent a great question from Kenny Bisflower, is that I do think there are importance to the dark cycle, and I do believe that maybe it can influence the phenotypical expression. That was the reason I switched to 1113. It wasn't for yields or anything else. It was because I read DJ Short say the plant expresses it more at 1113 as far as phenotypical expression, like color, smell, flavor, and things like that, than at 1212. And it might have just been because the lights they were using back then were really hot and intense, and maybe one less hour was beneficial, or maybe there's something to having an extended dark cycle. I've seen it actually finish like hazes faster, stuff that was like white pistols towards the end, dropping it from like 1113 down to like 10 on, 14 off. And even I've seen people go less than that, like only 8 hours on at certain points. And I think that the dark cycle reactions, the things that the plant is doing while the lights are off, are definitely different than the things that the plants are doing while the light's on. So it's important to have a dark cycle, in my opinion. I personally like to veg under 17.7 and flower under 11.13, but there's so many different proper ways to do it properly, or do it well and have great results. So it all really depends on everyone's setup. So
those seem like perfectly reasonable numbers, Jack. I like the oddness of the numbers, though. That's quirky.
Just like myself, if you get to know me better in the future. But it also saves on some of the electricity. San Diego has some of the most expensive electricity in the entire world, I would imagine. It's definitely the most expensive in the US. I looked up like what's the most expensive electric in the US, and then I looked up what I'm actually paying, and it was more than what they were listed. So it's like pretty fucking crazy out here. So definitely happy that I'm running a very, very small operation and using LEDs.
Yeah, fortunately, you don't have to invest anything in climate control equipment, though. So, count your blessings where you got them.
Absolutely. That is 100% true. Kenny Bisflower, thank you, Spartan Grown, for digging this out of the chat. And anybody, shout out to all the moderators, whether you're on the panel or in the YouTube comment section. If you want to pin a question, if you see a good question, right click it and pin comment, and it'll go up to the top, and then I could go find it later. Or if you're on the panel, you can copy and paste it into our Zoom chat, so that way we can get some of these good questions answered throughout the show, because a lot of them scroll by and I miss them, and I watch it tomorrow or whenever. I end up rewatching the show and viewing all the chat and saying, oh damn, I wish we would have answered that question or gotten to that, because it was actually relevant to the conversation. But with that being said, Kenny Bisflower, does anyone have any experience with caregiving in San Diego area? I'm trying to start with a couple of patients, but there's not any type of consulting for caregivers. So being in the San Diego area, I'll say, unfortunately, Proposition 215, it's still alive, but extremely limited. And we could talk off air, because I don't want to say anything officially, because there are legal ramifications to those types of things. And I don't want to give you any improper information. I have a very good doctor. I would recommend Oceanside Alternative Medicine. The lady, I've been going there for several years, and she's worked with veterans and a whole bunch of other people, and she'll actually stand up and fight for you in court. And there are things like the caregiving is difficult. Back in 215, when it was just 215, the medical days, sorry to like ostracize anybody who's not in California, but we could grow up to 99 plants if you had patients, and you could supply those patients with cannabis medicine for free. If they could, they wanted to supply you with a little bit of money to pay you for your inputs, that was okay. But it wasn't, it was like a donation type thing. You weren't selling anything. So be careful. Definitely contact me, and I could put you in touch with some good people. There's like the Pop Brothers at Law, who are cannabis lawyers here in California. They're probably a little bit expensive, and I don't know if you want to keep them on retainer or anything like that, but it might be worth consulting with them or somebody else locally to help you get set up. Normal, there is SD Normal. There are a few different groups I could link you up with around the area. I think Matthew might actually know a few people. So Matthew, if you have any thoughts on this, because I know you're also San Diegan, I'd love to hear your input.
I don't. I saw that message in the comments, and the particular reason why I didn't attack it was because I didn't really have a good solution, unfortunately.
like to partially answer this question and then piggyback it onto Chicha B. Shout out to her in chat. She said that she'd like to be a Michigan caregiver someday. So I can throw like my experience, but it's not going to help so much on the legal aspect because I don't know the laws in on your side. But I can talk about Michigan. I started growing as a caregiver. That was my first grow, and how did I do that? Was I just I didn't have any, just exactly what your story was in your question, the first question, and that's like, who the hell do you talk to learn how to grow? Now I have a background. My very first job that I ever had when I was a kid was I worked on a farm, so I have kind of a little bit of an agricultural background. So I wasn't completely new to it. So that helped me because what I did was I went online and I started searching for their information. Well, unfortunately, you'll find quickly enough that there's a lot of conflicting information when you look and you're looking at just people's opinions. So you have to find like a good website and look at one person's system, one person's methodology, and try that, and then do that with each one. As you find and research and find other people's methodologies, try that on like one plant, but keep doing the old way on the old way. Always go with what works for you. Just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you, and vice versa, because our environments are going to be a little bit different and everything else. So my only advice would be is find one voice that calls to you that you're like, okay, this person, I like watching their whatever YouTube show or whatever they've got going on. Follow the people that you like to watch because you're going to be wanting to watch a lot of their stuff, and then just do their system and implement their system. And if they start pulling up words that you don't understand or you're not sure what they mean, look them up on Google is, I mean, that information, there's so much information. I learned a lot of my growing from doing countless hours. I honestly researched for a year before I put a cannabis seed in the ground because they're so expensive. I wanted to know what the hell I was doing with it. So I put a good year in before I even put a seed in the soil.
It never stopped. I've seen you over on Dude Grows. When I used to listen to Dude Grow show, I would see like, oh, Spartan Grow and answer this question. So either you knew it or you went and found the answer and put it onto that thing. And I want to throw out a few of them. Dude Grows is a good one. If you would like to listen to podcasts, Rasta Jeff has the Grow From Your Heart podcast. This one you obviously already know about. Dr. MJ has an amazing site. If you like to read articles, check out cocoforcannabis.com. Rasta Jeff basically talks you through start to finish how he grows his plants. And it's like a 4-hour long playlist on the Grow From Your Heart podcast YouTube. So there's lots of different resources out there depending on what level of education and style of education best fits you, because some people are visual learners. Some people like to listen. They could drive to work and back and take it all in. Some people have to like sit down and watch visually and see it all happen, or be hands-on. And you're definitely going to learn the most from your own experience.
That's probably top of my list is Rasta Jeff's podcast. He has a section in there, and it's like it walks you from the very beginning. Like the first whole episode was just about picking genetics and what you should look for. After that, the next episode was how to germinate those genetics. And I mean, a whole episode on it. So it's like he's going to answer questions you didn't know you had yet.
Even before you germinate, he was like making sure you had set up so you're safe. Like your lights aren't going to be shining out your windows. You're not going to be smelling up the place if you're in a red state, or even not in a red state. Like you don't want people to know that you're growing necessarily. So we talked about safety. He pushed safety harder than anybody I've ever seen in the cannabis community online ever did. So shout out to Ross Jeff for that, because I think sometimes it's overlooked, especially now that it's legal and it's becoming more and more legal, but it's still illegal federally. So I will just say that. And as far as
that
going
being
back to
said, that's all synthetic side too. Like if you want to be organic, that's probably not where you want to get your information. He does organic stuff too, though. You can search and find some information, but I don't know if he's done a start to finish one.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a bunch of good organic ones out there. The Organics Takeover with Smiley's Garden, who's in the chat, has been asking great questions and dropping some good knowledge in our chat this evening. Also, the Advancing Eco Agriculture, and there's another good one.
Embracing Organics.
Embracing Organics, and
Kiss
Tad
Organics.
Hussey, Kiss Organics podcast. There's like 70 or plus of those, so tons of great stuff. And then the KNF guy, KNF Gardner, I'm blanking on his
I could go on for the Grow Room 420. That's all they talk about is organics. They'll talk about synthetics here and there, but we always get to the organics. Always GMO out there, throwing down the knowledge too.
So much
we
good
could stay here
stuff.
for hours. That's all over the place, man. You just do a few searches, and once you start following some channels, the other ones are going to start being suggested to you, and you're going to find them.
And you'll hear the crossover, like some people are saying this and some people are saying that, and then there's like the truths are like oftentimes the things that everybody is saying and agreeing upon. So that commonality is often like good information for, in my experience at least. One of the things I wanted to say for cannabis in San Diego, like there is that possibility if you just wanted to grow and get that under your belt yourself, you can gift up to an ounce of flower in California to anybody who's an adult over at the age of 18 if they have a medical card, 21 and older if they're just rec. So that'd be a good way to start growing your own product. Everybody has the 6 plant count automatically if you're 21 and up. You can get a 12 plant count with a regular medical card or a limits exemption if you talk to a doctor like the Oceanside Alternative Medicine. They'll inform you about that stuff. So if you can get yourself a setup that's large enough to supply a few patients, then you can do it all on your own, or you can teach them how to grow and make it kind of a collaborative effort.
On that point, I was just going to mention that I recently went through my that big old video I made, that IPM review part 2, the cannabis ecology video on my YouTube channel, and I kind of made it a little bit more navigable. It's almost 2 hours long, and so I like put like little placeholders because YouTube recently made it so you can like segment your video out. So I've got like various intro topics about like cannabis microbiome and sort of like various arthropod microbe interactions and that kind of a thing.
Like
So for those of you,
time-stamped?
yeah, they're time stamped. Yes, that's the better word to use. And so like I think that definitely that's one update that I'm a fan of, because I think it does help make long form videos like mine, where it's just like a deluge of information that can be very dense. Just you can break it up a little bit and you can chunk it.
See, I take the opposite approach. I'm fucking ADD over here, so I have to listen to shit at 2x because like if it goes too slow, then I get distracted. So I 2x things and I listen to it twice, or at least 2 times. So it's like the same amount of time, but I just listen to it back to back.
You get twice as much information. And then on the legal side of things, the one thing that I can give advice for on the legal side of things, in Michigan at least, you can go right to the Michigan's government website, so michigan.gov, navigate to LARA, so it's the licensing department. You go there, then you find BMR, which is the Board of Marijuana Regulation, and then you can search through there and get the actual law and pull it up and read the damn thing. It's kind of lengthy, but it's common. I mean, it's not hard. It's not a hard read. It's pretty common sense words.
California's is bullshit, man. It's really long and it's really hard. It's the legal definitions and terms. They hide a lot of the stuff from the medical days. They try and make you think that you don't have rights. They make a lot of like threatening things. So like before, shit that wasn't even illegal can now get you thrown in jail, even though it just got legalized. So
yeah, that's not the way it is here. It's pretty straightforward. They did a really good job. Shout out to everybody involved with that.
If you want to check it out, bcc.ca.gov. It's Bureau of Cannabis Control in California is what we call it here. But yeah, that is very local and centralized, but I'm glad that we talked about the caregiving aspect, because I think that's one of the purest elements of the community, when you actually find a good, true caregiver relationship where you can give stuff away freely to people in need, or even if they have to, support you and reimburse certain aspects of the grow to keep you going and keep them going. Many of them are happy to do that if it's legally allowed. So something definitely worth looking into, and I'm glad that we discussed that this evening. Kyle says my timer's shut off at 8:30, so got to spray STS on the mothers for 8 o'clock. So I'll have to slide away at 8, my homies. What time is it over there now? You got like 15 minutes, Kyle? Do you have any thoughts on this matter? Is there caregiving in mass?
There is. There's some hoops you got to go through, and to be honest, that's kind of where I was going to head first. When I moved, because I'm from New Hampshire originally, and they're still extremely anti up there, and I still pray that Governor Sununu changes his mind on something, even because they're just missing out on money at this point. But so I'm stuck in mass for now. But I was looking into it. I don't know all the complete details. I know I did try and go for a micro license at one point, and I did follow through with the application with that. And then I basically filled out the entire application, and at the very end of the application, it told me that I needed a designated address. So you actually already have to have the building, and that might be everywhere else too. So maybe I'm behind the loop here, but you already need to have like the facility in place with an address and everything else already set up just to submit the application here in Massachusetts. It's just, I don't know if anyone has any feedback on where they're at and how that's working. With like, do you guys even have micro licenses in California or anything?
There's a
Yeah, so
cottage industry.
when we started, it was supposed to be I think it was a 10-acre cap for the first 5 years. And so all the licenses were technically supposed to be micro licenses, but people started stacking them. Another example was you were not supposed to be able to be vertically integrated, which means you couldn't be the grower, the distributor, and the dispensary. People have gone around that and they just use different names and companies, and people are very clever with their business practices. I'll say that. So they've got people with way more than the 10-acre cap, and it was supposed to be aimed at the micro like grower and preserve the craft market, because California had like 50,000 cultivators in Prop 215, and we dropped it down to 5,000 license. So that means there was 5,000 people that got licensed and 45,000 people that didn't. So our black market just fucking flourished, because you're taxing the shit out of these 5,000 people. They have to pay really high premiums, just like you were talking about, Kyle. They have to own the land all the way up until they get the license. And then once they get the license, they have to jump through a bunch of hoops, red tape, pay the city, pay the state, and it just gets really expensive, complicated, and long. I was supposed to be working at a greenhouse that was supposed to be opening in April, and now it's been pushed back several months. So it's probably not. I don't even know if it's going to happen this year. There's like so much shit that gets thrown in front of these people. It ends up costing millions of dollars, even for the smallest operation. The
I know
absolute
people
smallest
who have
operation is millions.
lost, not to interrupt, but
Yeah,
since you
please
just
go
mentioned
ahead.
that, I know people who have like lost hundreds of thousands of dollars or even like millions of dollars, and they just happen to be in the very nice situation where they can actually do that and continue to exist. But definitely, like, people have like tried multiple times and still have had problems, even people with tons of money at their disposal.
Oftentimes those people end up not succeeding. No offense to them or anything against them, but there are a lot of them, and they've just tried, and maybe they didn't have the experience. And then the little guys that got into
Oh
it.
no, this is before they even get the chance to grow. I'm sorry. I'm talking simply about the regulatory process.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm seeing it firsthand. It's
They
definitely
never put a plant in the ground, and yet they still spent so much money. And there's no refund, of course. So
Yeah, no.
you got to have
Oh,
deep
man.
pockets to play. Unfortunately, I talked about that a few episodes back. I think it was when we look at the people who are behind cannabis legalization. Unfortunately, it's not just like normal and the people like us who are smokers and growers and members of the community. A lot of it now is big multi-billionaires who have basically written out the law with their lawyers so that their buddies that are also million and billionaires can get rich off of owning those few licenses and playing the game.
they'll even use like somewhat legitimate and oftentimes very legitimate like reasoning and strategies, but like I do feel like sometimes some of the laws that get put in place are in effect trying to limit the ability for other people as like I'm forgetting the technical term, is it a barrier, a barrier to entry.
It's like cronyism in a way. It's
Exactly.
not necessarily just their family, but like George Soros is a multi-billionaire, and he's one of the people who for years has been giving millions of dollars to try and get cannabis legalized. And if you look at the way that it's being written in California, we voted no against it a bunch of times, and I don't think it was because we were against cannabis. I think it's because we saw that the laws that they were trying to push were not good ones. And until 64 came around, they kind of dangled a few things in front of a lot of people's faces. They said you'd all grow 6 plants, and we're going to expunge a bunch of records, which kind of was a good enough cause that people got behind it, even though all the back end things weren't necessarily perfect. But
Yeah,
again,
that bait and switch tactic, or I guess not even a switch, but that's sort of like, yeah, it's hard because it definitely splits the opinions of the community. I was surprised that Encinitas was so against it, considering the population stereotypes, I suppose.
yeah, we
But
had a majority support it, but the vocal minority that comes out, the like moms that complain about like barking guard dogs. I went to a council meeting, and one of the examples they said there's going to be barking guard dogs and noxious fumes, and we're going to have headaches and this and that, and the lights are going to be on all night, and it's going to keep up our kids and this and that. And it's like unfortunate that there are those perceptions still out there. So a lot of it comes down to us needing to do education and to speak out at those meetings and talk about how it's medicine for us and how it has helped us and others, and the benefits that it can have, and also the financial things, like how it can benefit your community, bringing jobs, bringing tax dollars, and not bringing the crime that they often think that it's going to. Oftentimes the crime actually drops in areas where cannabis is legalized. So I think it's something we can all support and stand behind. But I don't want to get too political and rah-rah with it. Spartan, you got a pretty badass piece over there. I want to spotlight you because I saw you made a post about it earlier on your Instagram. But who did you get this from? Is it a specific glass blower?
Oh, dude. You know me. I went down to the cheap ass glass shop and I got the one that looked like a fucking ray gun.
That thing is badass. So is it a recycler? Can you at least do like a dry pull so we can see the water movement through that thing? That thing looks crazy. I don't even know how the fuck that would work.
Actually, I'm curious about what people think of things like bubblers and cool. The are there filters and other sorts of things that make the experience much better? Or do you think a lot of times it's kind of hype and art, which is totally fine?
They do. They make the hit different.
It smooths it out or cools it down, at least in my opinion. Like I have a bong.
Do you
here
feel like
that's
there's
got
like a maximum return on investment kind of in design?
I could just tell you like the way that I just like the ones that have the honeycombs. If they're gonna have anything in them, those.
I really like those diffusers. I think they call them.
That's what I was thinking of when I thought of that question too. Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
My wife prefers a bong like this. This is straight up classic beaker, and it chugs, and you can kind of rip it clear.
Those are my favorite. If I just want to get high, fuck yes, dude. I'm on that. I love the beaker. It sits in your lap. It doesn't fall over. It's a fucking the daily driver.
Solid. It's a battle axe.
Yeah.
I just think of the hassle they are to clean when you have things like that. I have this really intricate bong that has like a chandelier in the middle of it that in the second chamber that separates everything out into really small bubbles, and it is just, I mean, you can use it for like one session and then you got to clean it all out and it takes forever, and it's just, I don't know. There's that aspect. That's why a single like a beaker or a tube is better.
So I got an idea.
What I use inside mine, it's called Peace Water. See how it's not really clear? It's like translucent.
Yeah.
Sort of like,
but it's got like citric acid
almost
in there. So it's as easy as just pouring this shit out and it's fucking clean again usually. I might have to run a little bit of alcohol in the spots where it comes, as you pull and it kind of rides up, it might leave a little bit up in here. But all where the water part is, it stays clean.
Human innovation.
I got an IG ad for this product. It's like it looks like an Alka-Seltzer tab, but they claim it's organic and stuff. You just drop it in your piece and pour boiling water in there, let it sit for
I just saw that too.
And it comes out clean.
I'd be interested in playing with that.
Yeah, I'll
describe that again.
I'll go find it.
It
looks like I'm
DM or something.
It's like a powder. It was Spanish.
These all sound like wonderful things, and I'm probably going to get some of them. But my point is still, the more intricate it is, the more frequently you're going to have to clean it, down to the point where you're cleaning it like after every person does their bong rip. So
even if it's more efficient,
get yourself a vaporizer and you never have to clean your bong again.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this bong right here, I run my vape through. I haven't cleaned the water in a few weeks, and what gets dirty is the actual whip. This is like a little hose and then the piece of glass. I just clean the glass, which all you do is run it under.
You should spotlight yourself. We can't see you.
Yeah, you get me.
Okay, 1 second.
They was watching me shake my head.
Yeah, but we trust that you're telling the truth, Spartan.
All right, can you see me now?
Yeah. Well, wait, hold on. Now we're both pinned, it looks like, or something.
I'll try and unspotlight you. I think you might still be spotlighted.
Although I've thought about that, Spartan, I think maybe every time we see you, you've got a different piece. So I think maybe it's just that they get dirty and then they get put in a box somewhere and you get a new piece. And that's why you don't care about that.
No, it's like
you did a video, you can see them all.
I'm gonna put me on record. I put my mouth in way dirtier places. It's all right if I have a dirty bong, man.
Something to brag about, man.
Hey, I'm just an honest guy.
It's the truth. Truth hurts sometimes. But yeah, the vaporizer I use is called the Vapor Brothers VB1 Desktop. It's just it looks like a pencil sharpener, and it has a little dial on it. It was made in 1999 originally in San Francisco, California. It uses like a European wood with no pesticides and a mineral heating element. A lot of the knockoffs that look like that use wood that has pesticides, and they use heating elements.
No termites, though.
No what?
I said no termites, though.
No termites, but you don't want to be inhaling something that has glues that are really unhealthy for you. So definitely, if you're going to get a box-style vaporizer for your desktop, get the Vapor Brothers. They're like 100, 150 bucks or something. The knockoffs are like 50, but it's not worth your health to inhale nasty
Definitely
chemicals.
not with your health. Yes,
So,
please don't
sorry.
get the small Yocan that's like, or whatever, that's like 25 bucks or 30 bucks, and you don't know what glues or adherents have been used.
I'm thinking
Get something
the
a little
Airizer, The
Airizer is really
or
good.
or the volcano. Those are the two. I think I'm gonna treat myself with a volcano and just say fuck it, just splurge. I got
Definitely get a volcano. Absolutely,
almost
if you can.
okay, good. Everybody's telling me that, so I'm just gonna do it, man. It's
Yeah,
not.
definitely do it.
I'm like 1 day less than 30 days away from my court date for my divorce. After that, I'm gonna get me a volcano.
I'll just say the
I heard
Airizer
that
is
they're
pretty
hard
damn
to
good.
get, though.
$100.
They're hard to get. No, they're not for me. They're not. I just
I'll have to-
saw one. Like I can physically go and grab it. And
Oh, go get it immediately.
oh, really? You think I won't be able to get it because of that law?
I don't know, man. I would just not take it a chance, especially since you put it out there in the podcast. You better believe somebody's gonna go out there.
You're right. You're right.
If anybody's interested in the bag style vaporizer, my wife doesn't like the whip style, so I got her one of these. It's called an Airizer Extreme Q. It is made by a Canadian company, and it's got a little thing on the top, and then the bag basically gets plugged in. There, I'm not going to spell it myself again. But yeah, Airizer Extreme Q. It's you can do a whip style or a bag style. You set yourself temperature, and you've got 3 or 4 different fan settings, and it's definitely, I would say, worth checking out. I think the Volcano is like $600 or $700 still, so you could save yourself $500. And I've used the Volcano and I've used the Airizer, and other than having a little gauge on the top of the bag, which you can actually buy the Volcano like mouthpieces and put them in Airizer bags if you really want to do that. But other than that, it's a pretty similar thing. You've got like a turkey bag that's being filled up by it almost looks the same. I looked at it's like a skinnier Volcano, like the shape of it. It's definitely inspired by, it was much later than.
Convergent evolution.
But how are
There you
they? So you're saying they're exactly the same, and the only difference is the price? I mean, that's hard to believe for me. Because the price is so big, so vast.
I think it's honestly Volcano. I was actually a little disappointed because I was looking into Volcano myself. I wanted to get the hybrid, which has the whip, and you can also use the bag. But then I saw people giving it 1-star reviews saying there's metal shavings in their fucking bowls because it's like a metal on metal. There's the little plastic bowl piece that goes between. The one they machined it, I guess a few of them had metal shavings in their product, like when they're going to stir up the bowl and things like that. So that let me down a little bit. But on top of that, it's really, I personally think that it's just brand. You're paying for the brand name. The elements, it's like LEDs. You can buy a really, really expensive one. Like a Fluence is going to still cost you like $2,500 for a 5x5. But you can also get a fucking $1,000 light or $700 or $800 light that'll be putting out similar PPFD, similar diodes. Maybe the brand name one has a little bit more consistency or reliability. I haven't had this for years. I have had the Vapor Brothers for several years, and they've never broke on me. So I can't speak to the long term of that. But even if it breaks on you after like a year or something, shit, it's $100. And VapoSpy is where I get all my vaporizers. VapoSpy has really good discount codes. Like that's a $200 vaporizer, and if you just type in whatever coupon code, I went to like Cream City Vapes, type in the coupon code, and it was like 85 or $90 off. So $200 vape dropped down to like 100, 115. So definitely some good deals out there if you are willing to look and not just buy direct from the manufacturer. They do give you legit products. I've tested it with a different company as well.
I can't believe the zigzag man ain't pushing the zigzags. What's the matter with a zigzag? $5.
Hey man, I still roll up on occasion. A joint has its place, that's for sure. Every method.
I love my joints, man. That's like tradition for me. Like first time I grow a strain, that has to be a joint.
I love it all the way.
That's how
I have to say I'm a traditionalist too.
That's how I judge. That's how I pheno hunt. It's through smoking a joint of the flower I grew. That's how.
Joints are certainly my preferred outdoor method. Like if I'm gonna be like in a park or outside or camping or whatever, I'll just roll up a bunch of joints.
And that's when the pieces get really clean. When I'm going to test out something new, that's when I clean out everything. Clean.
That's a good point.
Or when my pipe or everything else is dirty and I don't want to clean it, I'll roll a joint. I've been known to do that too.
Spartan, did you clean up all your pieces today because it's like your show day, or are you just
Oh, that video that I shot, that's the day I cleaned them. So it might have been yesterday, or maybe it was today. One of the it was recently, yeah.
All of them being cleaned at one time is impressive. One tip is if you have multiple bongs, like my wife has the beaker and I have my little one that has the multiple chandelier, when I'm smoking out of that bong, if I choose to, which is much more rare nowadays, and it gets way dirtier, way faster. Instead of using like rubbing alcohol and salt and just dumping it down the drain, you can actually use that same rubbing alcohol and salt from like one bong to the next one to the next one. It'll get dirty, but it does an effective job of cleaning it. So in my opinion, I think it's at least worth giving it a try and not like doing a fresh batch for each one just to make that alcohol stretch a little further. I know it's more available now, but at the beginning of the illness
Yeah.
times, it was like pretty hard to find that shit. And prices went up a lot on it, like a lot. I was paying like $60 a gallon for it. Now it's down to like 30 or 40 again. Anybody have any other things that they use to clean their bong other than ISO and salt?
I put that link in chat and then the chat here in Zoom if you want to pull up that website.
Oh yeah, Hetty Eddie's product.
Yep.
Hetty Eddie's glass cleaning tabs. Okay.
There you go.
I'll
I haven't tried them, but it looked really good, and the shit was spotlessly clean. And he had some, honeycombs and diffusers on the pieces that the guy did in the little video. But I can't find the post now. But I had the website pinned.
Yeah, so I pulled it up. They're only $15, so it's not too bad of a price. But I don't know how long that would last. I'm sharing the screen right now. It'll show up on the YouTube here in about 10 or 20 seconds with the delay.
Does it only take one?
I think you could probably crush one of those things up on a smaller piece and only use half of one of those tabs. Personally.
That wouldn't be bad. Fuck, $1 every time to clean your piece. That's not terrible. $15
No.
for 15 of them.
I used to use the solution.
Has anybody
420.
tried these?
I haven't.
I saw a
haven't
video that
either.
convinced me. I mean, maybe it could just be bullshit, but they had like actual
Just
bongs
like
and
their
pieces.
marketing video?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a company.
Okay,
called
well, we're basically just giving
Yeah.
then.
I still want to fucking see that. I'll give it
Listen,
a fucking. It's
there's a
$15. I'll
company
try something for
called-
$15. Shit, it's not like a
called Weed
fucking
Wipes.
$900.
Sequence will try anything twice.
That's right.
Weed Wipes has this oil. It's like, it has a flavor though. That's why I won't use it. But if you put a couple drops in, it'll make it so when you rinse it out, it's a lot more cleaner. It doesn't get so gunked up. But it's
That's like Spartan's Peace Water. Is that what you were saying earlier? Spartan Peace Water does that as well.
Yeah, it'll turn like it'll start turning dirty color like a dirty colored water, but it pours right the fuck out. It's
right.
I
You
like
rinse it. It's clean. Yeah.
I'll say
yeah.
this. I don't like Resolution Colorado. I really like their little silicone caps for like the top and bottom of your bongs or pieces, but the actual chemical solution, the gel, it's like a similar cleaning product. It took like half an hour for me to clean my bong versus like rubbing alcohol and salt. It was less effective and it took like way more rinses, like 15, 20 rinses. Is so much water wasted to like get the actual product out of the piece after using it. It was definitely a pain in the ass. Wouldn't recommend it. Solution 420 if you want to buy something, if you have really caked on shit, or Solution 710 works as well. I've tried those personally. Kyle Breeder's got his hand up, so I'm going to let him jump in here.
Hey guys, I'm trying to completely interrupt the conversation. I got my timer set for 8:30, lights out at 8:30, so that they're not simmering in STS spray with the lights on. So I got to go spray them. But yeah, I just want to. So I got to go. But I just want to say I'm happy everyone's still here. I'm glad everyone's doing well. And if anybody that's listening to this, I do have a website. The link is in my bio on all social media platforms. If you want to know what it is, it's the letter P followed by breeding.com. And I wish everyone well and have a good night, everyone.
Peace out, Kyle.
Take care, man.
Have a good night, Kyle.
You too,
Thanks again for
buddy.
coming, Kyle. Always good to see you. Definitely check him out if you're looking for feminized seed. It's pbreeding.com, and that's predicative breeding on all social media platforms. But definitely interesting topic with the cleaning of the pieces. I do think not only is it better flavor, but I think it's better for your health. I've smoked out of like dirty bongs and like coughed up like resin and shit. Like it just makes you cough way more and way harsher. So I think Spartan has tried out something that I'm looking into trying, which is that Moose Labs mouthpiece with the filters, which gets some of the stuff out of the. Is that what you've got shown it right there?
Yeah.
Oh, you can hang it around your neck and it fits right into the mouthpiece of your.
Yeah, because I was gonna switch between bongs, so that was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna connect it to my neck. That way, I always have it.
That's cool, man. And I've seen they've even made a smaller one for joints, but I think that one can also work for joints and blunts or whatever.
Yeah, you can
Even
actually
carts.
Well, let me see if I got hold on. I got a little roach in here, but you can get the idea. But it'll fit. You know, it would
Yeah,
look.
hey,
I mean, that would look fucking ridiculous, I guess. But you could do it if you wanted to.
hey, beat that cup cough back in the day. Now it's the vid cough, but we won't get into that.
Yeah.
Definitely interesting product. I really don't think I've even seen that from anybody else. I think it's just Moose Labs, but maybe there are other people out there doing it. I've also seen like after you blow out, if you're like in a hotel room,
yeah,
they have like the filters,
Yeah.
like the Smoke Buddy, or one's called the Sploofy, and it has like rechangeable like carbon filters that you can slot in there. So like after it stops working, you can buy just the little refillment, and that definitely will pay for the no hotel cleaning fee after just like one use, you know. So
Yeah.
definitely something worth having on the
So
stoner gift
worth it
list.
if you travel. I mean, it's just like almost a necessity.
Anybody traveling these days? I haven't really gone anywhere. July, I'm actually going to be going to see some family though.
Brandon is in Hawaii right now, I believe, or something.
That is
I
true.
was just in Florida. It's weird, man. They they have you in the airport and they tell you to be 6 feet apart, but and then nobody is, and they don't really say anything. And then you get on the airplane and you can take down your mask to eat, and you're sitting 4 inches from your neighbor. It's bizarre. It's a weird experience. And I mean, I had to travel for family to go see some family before they pass. So it was weird though. And I had to bring my daughter, and she can't wear a mask. She's 10 months old. So it's weird. That's all I gotta say.
Strange
Everybody
times.
all right? Everybody made the trip back and forth, all safe?
Yeah, nobody got the
Good.
virus. Everybody's alive. Even the person who is scheduled to pass is still alive. So I'm okay.
Good. Glad
Yeah.
to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say no comment on all things COVID because, yeah.
I'm sure everybody's heard a lot of it in their day-to-day life, and probably this isn't the place that they come to hear more about it. That's for sure. So on the growing side of things,
I got to say, I'm glad that rubbing alcohol is easily accessible now.
Smash Cannabis was saying to get a 5-gallon bucket and fill it large enough so that you could just dunk your pieces in there and cover the bucket. Personally, I think that's a lot of ISO, but
That's a lot.
It could definitely work. I mean, I just don't know if I'd be able to fucking commit to buying a 5-gallon bucket. Well, I have a bunch of 5-gallon buckets, but filling 5 gallons with ISO just to like soak my pieces when I use, I'd say like a quarter cup, maybe half cup when I'm cleaning like both bongs. Just
I
pour
think
it
I'm
in
gonna
there.
start up a distillery just to make some.
You can get yourself a
Yeah,
still on
that won't
Amazon,
make
pretty
much,
cheap.
right? Yeah.
I think they're like 40
Good
bucks
old-
electric still.
Good old Carter.
Or is it legal in your
Um,
state? I know some
It's
states
not. It's
actually.
actually not. You're not supposed to be able to distill. It's only the home brewing, I believe. But
Yeah. What if it wasn't for consumption? Like, well, I guess, yeah, there's no way to determine which one.
well, I
you're
think
gonna
that's
do
the
it for.
problem. Is
Yeah.
that regardless is dangerous, right? But
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I definitely say if you're going to use something like alcohol, I have a good source for or ethanol or whatever, like Coptech, 200 proof. You know, you want to get the good stuff without any of the weird additives or any of that stuff, preferably. And I use I have a vaporizer paranormal, and I have the titanium buckets that I utilize. It's actually a mod for I'm forgetting the term, for like tobacco substance or whatever.
It's like
and
a vape.
yeah, exactly. And I have a heat sink attachment, which is pretty nice. And I have attachment for rosin or for whatever concentrate I want to use. And I have a titanium bucket, so there's no coil, there's none of that stuff. I don't have to worry about adherence or oils or glues or any of that stuff. And I just take it out of the element, and I just put it in this Coptech, and and then I use a couple of gosh, I'm forgetting the name, toothpicks or some other sort of like implement to just kind of like get whatever other junk that might still be on.
Yeah,
there.
scrape off the hard stuff.
Mhm.
What does a gallon of that 200 proof run you? I'm just curious.
To be honest, I don't know. When I said a good source, I meant that I don't even get it myself.
There you go. I order mine from Colorado, not 200 proof, but for RSO purposes, I get the, I think it's called 420 extractor from Colorado. They ship it to my door. I want to say it's like 40 bucks per gallon, but it's like 20 bucks shipped, so it ends up being 60. But I use the Extract Craft Source Turbo, and it reclaims the alcohol, like 95% of it. So a gallon has lasted several runs where you can make multiple grams of RSO.
That's really cool. The
Yeah.
other thing I've heard is really good is those sonic jeweler cleaning devices. I haven't pulled the trigger on one.
I've been trying
Yeah.
to like look into how you would make that work. One of the guys who kind of taught me how to grow in cocoa, he said he has one, but I've never actually seen it in action. There's a name for that.
It's only
type
for
of,
small pieces, I would imagine. Yeah, it's Sonic something, right?
yeah. maybe somebody in the chat will know the actual name.
Sonic
but
cleaner.
it's like hypersonic.
Something like that.
But it almost looks like a dishwasher. Like some of them, like you put it in like a tub and it like pulsates the water a certain way that maybe loosens it up. But yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to go about doing it. But I personally have not gone about trying that approach. Hot water, even sometimes just like boiling water. My sink gets hot enough
Yeah.
that for my vaporizer, I'll have to, after a few weeks, my screen will just be gunked up from resin. And you can clean them and reuse them, but they're so cheap that I just end up tossing them out. And I'll take that out, and then you just grab a pair of tongs, stick it underneath the sink, real hot water. It flushes all the basically like resin that got through the screen and kind of gunks up that part and blocks the airflow. So every so often you have to clean it and maintain it. And I talked about that a little bit with Painted Lady. With she tried her Crafty vaporizer, and she was talking about she didn't even realize that you could like take that thing off, and she took it apart, cleaned it, and she's like, "Holy shit, the flavors again! Like I could taste everything, and it makes a huge difference." So especially if you're like pheno hunting, I know Spartan said a joint is a great way, and I totally agree with that. Even like the dry pull, the dry hit on a joint that a lot of people don't do is taking that first. I don't just do one; I do like 2 or 3, like nice good pulls where I can like smell it, taste it, like get that experience of the terpenes in your mouth before you actually light it up. Sometimes that first hit isn't even a great hit, depending on how it's rolled. There's a lot of paper and shit, so you're like puffing it and like fucking smoking hemp and other things. So it's definitely nice to have a variety of vaporizers, handheld or desktop, whatever works best for you.
I always burn that paper. Like I hold it in front of me with the lighter and burn all that off before I start puffing on that joint.
So I learned a trick from raw can roll, like the raw CEO. It's RAWK and roll.
Burn the edges off.
Yeah, you basically like spin it, and if you know how people twist the top of their joint so it's got like a spike. He just holds the lighter kind of next to it and like angles it in and goes all the way around the outside, and then you can just pop that top perfectly off, and it comes off so clean, and you can just start by lighting the actual greens, not any paper, which is the way that I prefer it. It's almost like when you have a cone and you pack it, you just have that end. If you filled it all the way up to the tip, it just sparks up and burns pretty well if you packed it the right tightness. So definitely a good tip. He has a ton of rolling tips, like the double fold that helped me roll. It took me half an hour to roll a joint for a long time because I have arthritis. I shake so fucking much, I'd be spilling everything everywhere. But if you learn just a few tips, like using a glass tip helps me a lot because it keeps the shape consistent throughout the joint, and doing that fold on the bottom half, so you have the double fold, it gives you kind of like the boat, and makes it a lot easier for sure. So definitely don't give up on rolling if you're a shitty joint roller. I was for a while, or just a slow one. I actually rolled good joints. It just took me for fucking ever. Yeah, there's definitely good tips and advice on that channel. I think he's a private page despite having like millions of followers. So probably just trying to avoid shadow bans and people reporting. Instagram gets unfortunately really shady. I actually just heard that there's a service out there. Doesn't matter if you have 1 million followers, plus you could be a verified account. If somebody fucking hates you, they could pay a few grand to somebody, and they'll send 4,000 accounts to fucking just go report your page as spam and this and that. And it overwhelms Instagram's algorithm, and it just drops the page. And I've always wondered, like some of these, like I tested for Humboldt Seeds, their main page would go down. They have like 155,000 followers. Crazy, like plus.
So it's like a weird,
pages.
It's a weird like proxy DDoS attack. I'm surprised that
Basically.
Instagram like doesn't have a proper way to screen that out.
Yeah, you would hope, but I think that because we are in the cannabis space, it's technically federally illegal. So if they get enough reports saying like illegal drugs, like weapons or firearms, whatever, like sales or of this, and even if they're not selling, they could say like not for sale on Instagram and every single post. They'll go back like years and years and report every single fucking post and find one that might not have it on there, and it gets really.
I think it's
Yeah, you'll get tripped up in the algorithm if there's anything about cannabis or whatever on the page, and then you'll need some sort of human review, and in the meantime you're denied. And even that point, if you get the human review, you may not get approved or whatever else. But yeah, there's a risk that all those cannabis companies face.
But yeah, that rock and roll guy, he really is enthusiastic about his rolling papers and products.
Dude,
I love that guy.
I don't think cannabis is the only drug that he partakes in. Is all I'm going to say.
He's high on life, man. He makes so much money. I think when you're a business person, when you're a business person like that, I know a few people that are really successful in business that I know they don't do any other substance,
Right.
maybe
And they're
cannabis,
always
but maybe
jacked
nothing.
up.
and they're fucking so hype. They're just out there
Dude,
getting it, and they're like,
he
it's
could
like
do
the
whatever he
rush.
wants, Spartan. Like, yeah, and he like somebody that looks like he appreciates. Like some people that have been rich from daddy, they don't even know how to have fun and enjoy that money. But when you make it, like he made it and stuff, I think it's a different world. But yeah, I like that guy anyway.
Dude,
I'm
yeah.
reminded, this is not nearly as a happy example, but I am reminded of that Breaking Bad scene, which, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen that show, um, when Walt's talking to Jesse and he's like, man, if you're not careful, you'll just kill yourself with so much money. I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of thing where like even people who, no matter what, like you can just make poor decisions that are very costly, not just financially, but your health.
That happens all the time to stars, right? I mean,
and lotto winners,
get more money
Shit,
than the Saints.
The guy who founded Core Power Yoga, which you might think is like level-headed and like yogi, he was here in San Diego in his multi-million-dollar mansion. They franchised like 65 plus places, and he made fuck tons of money. He died in his home, allegedly drunk, fell down the stairs in a construction zone and killed himself. I personally think that sounded a little fishy, and people should look more into that. And I think that motherfucker probably got killed or knocked off, and there was some shady ass shit going on there. Personally, just throwing.
Yeah, I'd check that well. Who got that money?
Yeah, it's definitely a suspicious death in my opinion.
I'm reminded of Han Fei and the Emperor Qin, and without being super long-winded about something people don't really care about too much, I do know that there are definitely people who have had life experiences where they're betrayed by the people closest to themselves, especially people who have like power or are going to have power, or people who suddenly have things like tons of money or resources or whatever. And yeah, people do change.
I'll say this, it's certainly not all about money, and some of the happiest times of my life are when I had not very much in my pocket. So It's all about your perspective and appreciating what you do have, and loving and caring for those around you and trying to help. I think the happiest people I've seen tend to do things for other people out in the world. They help others, and they get a lot of gratification from that. And they usually get a lot of appreciation from that, because when you're being selfless and helping others, people tend to really appreciate that and give you lots of love. And it comes back to you in ways like I always say, karma is kind of logical. If you're doing good things for good people, you're going to be around good people, and it's going to come back around to you eventually. So
it makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
There's no honor among thieves type thing. If you're doing shady shit and you're around people that are doing a lot of other shady things, it's only a matter of time until it comes back around on you for the negative. So this community has the ability to do either one. We could go and get into the shady side of things, or we could kind of rise above and set a good example. And I think there's a lot of people out there showing how to do it. And if you do have the right to do things within the law, like nowadays, now that there's much more ability to do that, you can do it. And even if you want to operate outside the law, I still respect that as well. Not to kind of go against what I was talking about earlier, but with cannabis, I think we all kind of feel that it is the right thing, whether or not your law agrees with that. So it's just about being safe and careful with your actions.
It's about the spirit of collaboration. Amen, Jack. Absolutely.
We've got about 40 minutes left till the hour. I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts or topics that they'd like to get out there this week that we haven't brought up yet, because I know we started with lighting and we kind of dove into a whole bunch of other stuff there, and just want to throw it out there to the panel and see if there's anything that you would want to get to.
I have something. I just wanted to mention that I'm a staff writer for Skunk magazine as of several months ago, but totally officially now. And my debut article is in the spring issue that's coming up. That's this issue, and then I've already just written the article for the summer 2021 issue that's coming up. And I'm excited to be trying to spread, just like we were just talking about, which is why I'm reminded of it, this like sense of community and collaboration. And the topic I'll be talking about probably most frequently is like biosecurity and integrated pest management. How can we all, as a community of growers, as cultivators, not just of cannabis, but in general, gardeners, people who are agriculturalists or agronomists, whatever, how we can keep ourselves from getting pests that come into our whole region, working together at the strategic level, as well as what we can do personally, individually, to keep ourselves from spreading broad mice to our friends and things like that.
Great questions. I want to say congratulations. That's awesome. I'm familiar with Skunk Magazine, but I do have a follow-up question. Is that something that is available digitally? And how often do they typically publish do they still have a hard copy? Is the other question then.
They do.
Okay. And,
Yes, congratulations, Matthew.
is that something that's available online, or can people find that in like smoke shops, grow stores, things like that, or is it something that you have to sort of seek out?
I wish I was more privy to that information. I actually don't know in totality. I do know there's a print version.
I've seen them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Spartan's right here.
Yeah, congrats, Matt.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Are
Yeah,
they
and that's not the only
American?
place I'll be publishing that information. Isn't that right?
Is this
Indeed, we're getting
American?
pretty close.
Is
We're just
Skunk
teasing
based
it. I
in
think it's good.
America, Matthew? I'm sorry.
Say again.
Is Skunk based in America or is it a UK publication?
I actually have no idea.
Wow. No,
I
I'm
think it's
joking.
American, Tao, to be honest. But
Yeah,
I
'cause
can see why you think
Weed
it's.
Yeah, we need more
Yeah.
information, Matthew.
I'm thinking of Weed World because I know Weed World's in UK. I'll go get some. I have a bunch of Skunk magazines, right?
I was pretty
We've
sure
got
it
a
was an
bunch of new
American thing,
subscribers on the
but
line here that need to know where to go.
yeah. Yeah, you'll just well, here's the thing. You'll see a lot more of my digital content on the blogs, and you'll also see I'll be uploading video content as well in the future too. So you can look out for that, and you can also look out for my video content on my YouTube channel as well. There's going to be a lot of overlap and synergy there for sure.
Exciting stuff, no doubt. I have always felt honored to have you on this panel, but it's just more, clarification and acceptance that your work is of that level that needs to get out there to the people in this community and others. But I'm happy that you got that recognition from Skunk magazine. That's awesome. The American one has been a collector of that and lots of other cannabis literature for a long time. So it'll be cool for him to start getting the editions with you and your work in there, having kind of known you and been able to talk to you weekly on the panel.
Yes, absolutely. It's really cool to see everyone on the panel and the sort of like the immediate area and even the people in chat kind of like, just like that phrase, rising tides lifts all ships. And I'm a big fan of it. I'll never forget the guy who really, not that I hadn't heard the term before, but really instilled that in me. And he almost passed buds, but he learned that he was colorblind when they first started testing for it that year. Too bad.
For those who don't know, that's a military training that you have to go through to get on.
The SEALs.
The SEALs, yeah, which is very difficult, notoriously. A lot of grown men cry and quit and give up, and I would probably do that too. Big respect for anybody in the military. The American one is showing off some Skunk magazine right here. Pretty awesome to see. I love cannabis publications, whether it's Skunk magazine, High Times back in the day, Sensimia Tips. God, there are so many good ones. It's just amazing to see it printed up because I still think we're in a place where cannabis is illegal federally. So for us to be growing it and seeking this knowledge and sharing this information, we're kind of all, it's less dangerous now, but there's still a little bit of a risk involved with it. And there's not tons and tons and tons of, it's being written about more and more now than ever, but the good information and stuff, it's kind of hard to come by still if you don't know where to look. And it's cool to see some of these publications.
Yeah, this is a relatively old one. And look, Adam Dunn is highlighted in here, and Strain Review Blue Dream. So this is pretty old, actually. Skunkmagazine.com. I guess we'll get you more information easier. But yeah.
Volume 6, issue 5.
What year is
Yeah,
that?
this is from, I'm going to say it's got to be like 1996. I don't know. Let me see if I can find it.
It's got to say somewhere on there, I'd
Yeah.
imagine.
You would think there'd be a date somewhere, maybe inside the cover,
Stoner
It used to be
publication
right
at its
here.
finest.
or on the like within the first 5 pages. They might have a publication page.
Yeah, that's what
somewhere
I
up
was
in the
just.
front. They sometimes put ads before it.
They put a bunch of ads before it. All right, let me see.
Right.
Here it is. This should have it right here, right?
Yeah. Maybe not.
No, man. All it says is volume 6, no, issue 5. Damn.
Huh.
Oh, but at least 2010. All right.
Oh, okay. Okay,
There's a-
so not
yeah,
1996.
yeah.
Definitely closer to.
Yeah,
I was
definitely.
gonna say those look like
2000.
2000s pictures.
Definitely.
2010.
Yeah.
came
so
out,
that's
uh,
the
That's
ad.
where you're looking, somewhere in there.
Thank
Nice.
Google for that one. That's not off the top of my dome. As much as people like to call me the Wikipedia of cannabis, that was the Google. of cannabis.
2010.
So,
Wow, volume 6 was
yeah.
2010? Huh, interesting.
Smiley's had a question in chat, and actually he's asked it again, and I don't have the answer, so maybe I wish Brandon was here because I'm sure he probably does. But the I don't know if it's common, but
I
the
think he's
whole
baiting
idea.
us.
Well, it's fine. That's still. I mean,
We'll take it.
I'm willing
Take
to
the
learn.
bait.
So the common belief, and this is my belief, is that when I add sulfur, that I get more terp production. And his question is how does that happen when he's saying that there's no sulfur in any of the hold on, let me go back and get him. I don't want to misquote.
They're not present in
none of
the actual
secondary-
terpenes.
in the secondary metabolites.
Yeah, so he's talking about like terpenes. Everyone claims that sulfur brings on more terpenes. I'm going to
Well, I don't
stop
wanna
spotlighting
assume.
too.
There's lots of secondary metabolites.
I know, but he
Yeah.
specifically mentioned terpenes, I think, earlier as well. But all secondary metabolites can be influenced by your inputs. One of the things that, even though it might not be within the secondary metabolite itself, sulfur, if you Google what is the sulfur's use in flower growth, it has benefits for the actual growth of the flower. Thus, if it's benefiting the flower growth, then it can help the plant produce more secondary metabolites in that way. I don't know off the top of my head the exact structural things that sulfur is important for, but I know it's part of the NER that needs to be there, whether it's a living soil or hydroponic grow.
Oh,
Yeah,
shit, sorry.
I think it's like all I have to offer here is anecdotal evidence of my own experience, and I know that when I add sulfur in as a top dressing flower, early flower, that I get at the end, my end product is more terpy.
I mean, isn't that like saying I eat hamburgers, but I don't grow hamburgers out of my fingers?
What?
I don't know what that means.
I agree with that,
I think
actually.
I see where you're
Sulfur,
coming from.
isn't that like saying salt? Like if you're feeding sulfur to the plant, but it doesn't have it in the terpenes, but it helps produce terpenes. Well, hamburger doesn't grow hamburgers, but it helps me get fat. You know,
The proteins and the fats and the matter.
Well,
The
I think
question is
that's
Yeah.
mechanism.
well, I think-
I'm not sure what the
And
mechanism is.
I
but-
think the question is also specifically about like if there are particular secondary, like not just like overall plant health. And please like tell us in the chat what you mean, but
I
like
guess I'm
specifically.
I guess I'm the eternal optimist, and I'm just assuming
yeah,
that he's confused and he's asking like, how is that? He's like legitimately asking what's happening, how is it changing, what's going on,
Right, like
what,
the
why is there
biochemistry inside the plant, right?
right, yeah.
That's how
That's
I was
how I
reading
took
it too,
it.
and I was like, I don't know off the top of my head, but we could try to look.
Right, that's what I was
into that.
hoping. This is a question for Brandon. I think that could really.
Well, I'll give a few of the things I found on Google, at least, what that sulfur does for the plant. It helps nitrogen fixation and root nodules. It says sulfur supports several different plant functions, like the formation of enzymes. Sulfur is a crucial part of the process. I mean, there's like a ton of research on sulfur and how it influences plant growth.
That's
and flowers
pre-uptake
specifically.
stuff, though. That's what I was thinking of as
Yeah.
a soil amendment. So, is there any role in synthesis or secondary synthesis of, I mean, within the plant? Does it get uptaken?
You know, I was talking with somebody who was telling me about just this topic actually, and I don't remember the details really, but I think that sulfur is one of those sort of elements of like plant physiology that even in plants that aren't like super sulfuric, and the thing that always comes to my mind is like mustard plants. Of course, we're talking about cannabis here, but you know, I think that people don't realize or don't recognize often how influential it is. But again, I don't know if it is important for the like any of
It's
the like
vital.
immune system path. Well, sure, but like for the immune
Right.
system pathways, perhaps, or something like that. And certainly, they're not like making up like the chains and the links and like a lot of the aromatics and things like that. Although they could, you know, in like other plants, for example.
Well, they can also do different things to provoke responses in the plant.
Right.
So it would be just interesting to understand if there's been studies on that, but there probably haven't been that look specifically at sort of cannabinoids or terpenes and, you know, different levels of sulfur exposure. So we're kind of flying blind on the science of a lot of that stuff, probably.
Yeah, so I guess I just share the information on the front end because it's like ultimately what you want to do is grow the healthiest plant possible. We know that terpenes are something that are produced in extremely small volumes, and a lot of the scientists that are out there more educated than myself on plant physiology and botany and all of that will tell you that they're some of the highest order things that the plant produces. So if it's not a healthy plant, it's not going to produce tons of terpenes. And going to the plant health thing, there's
Right.
how do we define a healthy plant? That's a whole conversation. We could have a whole entire episode about that.
Yeah, if
And
you
we talked about it.
overstimulate the plant's immune system at the cost of like growth, that could be what you would call detrimental potentially, right?
Yeah, well, and it's like, what are you growing for? We always have to go back to that. It's like,
Right.
if you're growing for biomass yield and you're going to extract all of it, then like, do you want to grow 100 pounds with 1% terpenes or 50 pounds with 20%? You know, it's like you'd have to do some calculations and figure out if you're just going to grow it for extraction. Do you want to have less biomass, which is much more terpene rich? Maybe it's easier to extract, or maybe there's just less labor going into harvesting it. There's a whole bunch of things, but most of us are just trying to grow flower and like the best quality of it that we can in our space. So with that in mind, just like keeping the plant as healthy as possible. Something I wanted to bring up, I see a lot of people.
Sulfur is the key in the ignition for the whole car. I'll put an article
in that
in the
trucker.
chat.
Sorry,
And
you were saying something, Jack.
It may be, but I think it's like that bucket that Spartan Grown has talked about, or there's like the thing with the slats. It's like a barrel, and like the lowest slat is like the maximum potential you have. So like if your sulfur is not there at all, you're going to have some issues. But if it's there at the proper levels, then the plant will be able to get up to a certain potential. But then if there's not enough calcium, then it's only going to get up to that potential. If there's not enough light, if there's not enough moisture in the air, if there's not enough water provided at the right times, it's like all a balancing act.
Really, it's a contextual question, which is why I always like to use those famous two words, cultivation context. It's so important. It's easy to ask the question, well, what do you think about sulfur with plant growth? I don't know. In what context do you mean that?
Right? And that's why when you're in organics too, then it gets really like, there's a lot of art. And what I mean by art is just being in there, the experience and trying things and seeing what works and learning your plants. Because I'm sorry, organics is not a science yet.
I could read what this article says. So
it should be art.
Let's hear it. I want to hear it.
It's from Hugh Lovell. I guess I don't if you're familiar with him or not.
I'm not.
So that's like, yeah, I could find out. I know he's somebody, but
sulfur
interacts with life chemistry, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen compounds at surfaces. Along with warmth, it is the principal catalyst in biochemistry. Since everything going on in the soil biology occurs at the surfaces of soil particles, where minerals react with water, air, and warmth, sulfur activates surfaces. It is essential key in the ignition for kicking off robust soil biochemistry. In his agricultural course, Steiner speaks of how the spirit activity of the universe works as a sculpture, moistening its fingers with sulfur. All right, I don't know any of
that. You lost me at the end there, Tao.
I just dropped off. Wait.
So that's what I was saying. I mean, it's basically you're using it for stimulating the soil itself as an amendment.
What does it mean by
no? He's trying to channel the spirit of the universe.
It's not done yet. But listen, along with
what do you think it means by activate the soil surface? That was interesting. What does that mean?
I mean, I think it helps everything.
Just saying it's like increasing the surface area.
Yeah, sulfur works at the surfaces, boundaries, and edges of things to bring organization and life into being, regardless of other soluble elements. The soluble soil test for sulfur should show 50 parts per million for biological soil fertility to function properly. Light soils may need a bit less, and heavy soils may need more. In the total test, 60-to-1 carbon to sulfur ratio is helpful to ensure sulfur in soil reserves. And that's pretty much all he has.
How old is this paper?
I believe it 2014. So it's not that old.
It drifted into like 1700s language there.
Well, he just quoted something. He quoted something from something crazy, but then it goes through all the nutrients.
So we didn't realize that was a quote. That's that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a quote.
It goes through. I put the link in both chats. So
yeah, he did put that in the chat. So that'll be really helpful. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I really should go through.
Well, I'm open to whatever that idea. I'd like to, man, it'd be great to interview that person because I know that sulfur is it's like one of my secret sauces. I know that's one of the things that when I added it, I notice
Notice the difference. Yeah.
So yeah, maybe I don't know the inner workings of it, but I know it's fucking beneficial for sure.
Even from an IPM perspective, you know, it's
well,
very
that's where I got the idea. I mean, I'm so in
Yeah.
love with the sulfur dunks, right? So then I was
Uh-huh.
like, fuck yeah, let's give it a little sulfur here and see what happens.
I feel like, you know, it's almost like I'm definitely speaking from the hip here. There's no like, you know, coalescent like knowledge here, but I feel as though it's the kind of thing where you could use sulfur as like a general stressor for, you know, the bad guys, you know, the pathogenic fungi that might get onto your plant, the spores that might try to germinate, that sort of thing, kind of inhibit that microbial growth, but also possibly some good stuff.
Yeah,
But
and
at the same,
if you're like an IPM an attack, you're attacking it with more than one thing. That's just one more thing that's gonna
exactly
help you succeed. You know.
Are you
and then
watering
maybe like
in?
have a
That's
nice
like
little
cation
physiological.
in the soil too. I think that was more sort of what they were alluding to in that.
Yeah, for the soil.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You could have
It
both.
sounded pretty like it still sounded kind of artsy description of it, like
little bit
activating
poetic,
the
right?
surface of the soil. Yeah.
But you know what? I wonder if the Epsom salt is more the sulfur helping out the plant than the magnesium, because it's just magnesium sulfate, right?
Well, when all these
bet you
elements
it's
have to
both.
work
No, I
with each
don't-
other anyways,
see,
how is
I-
it even possible to designate one being so much better or so much more important or integral than the other? We just made the
Right.
we
You
just
need
made the
them all.
concession.
They work in concert with each other. But right, that's how it would affect things like cation exchange or molecular bonding in the soil itself, is because a lot of those compounds do bond with sulfates.
Spartan, so do you, I'd imagine that the answer might be no, and you have a different input, but you use like a micronized sulfur for your dunks. And then are you watering in with that ever, or are you using a different sulfur input to get sulfur into your soil?
Okay, so my sulfur input is different. So, but you could, I mean, you could do a root dunk, I guess, if you wanted to. I'm not sure if that's available. I think it's
Is
just
it
like
chelated? Like, would it be available? That was my next
I don't
question.
think it is. I don't think it is. But I imagine eventually it would break down, and if you're in an organic situation and reusing your soil, it eventually would become available. But
Would that like nuke your microbes?
I'm not
particularly the
aware-
fungi.
Well, yeah, the fungi, yeah, but I'm not aware of like bacterial reactions.
A lot of bacteria can metabolize sulfuric compounds. I think a lot of is such a vague term, but I think of bacterial glycosylation or however it's pronounced, which I think is sulfur compounds. Gosh, that wasn't as helpful as I thought it would be. Anyways,
I have a couple inputs that I like for sulfur depending on when I'm wanting to add it, but the most common is probably gypsum, because that gives me a calcium input at the same time, and it doesn't really mess with soil pH. So that's kind of a nice, easy one. Another one would be magnesium sulfate, which would be Epsom salts. That I prefer as a foliar if I was going to use it, kind of like a fast acting kind of a thing. I don't like to water that into the soil too much. I believe that a lot of what people diagnose as magnesium deficiencies aren't magnesium deficiencies. And when you start adding magnesium, when I use an Epsom salt, I'm adding magnesium. I always try to add at least a little calcium too, because there's a ratio there between the two that you want to keep in balance.
More CalMag.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I usually don't use Epsom salts unless I'm addressing like a deficiency that it's not even a little deficiency. It's getting pretty bad. Then I'll just take Epsom salts, put it in some water and spray it on my plants. But normally I would say gypsum is probably my biggest go-to for if I wanted to add sulfur, calcium sulfate. Another one that I've used but I use it less often is langbeinite. That one I can use in early flower to try to build potassium as well. I do that with some what I consider heavier feeding plants, or if it's a soil that's like on its fourth or fifth, it's getting pretty long in its age, and I feel like it's running out on potassium. I might throw in, instead of a gypsum top dress, I might throw in that langbeinite instead. It's all kind of situational.
Brandon likes Sulpo Mag, I think. It might be like OMRI listed, but it's just like sulfur, potassium, magnesium. I see that.
There's a ton of sulfates out there. So, I mean, there's tons of minerals bonded together, you know what I mean? And you can get them in, there's so many different ones. And really, you could just look at price if you wanted to. But my go-to is gypsum because it's fucking cheap as shit and works.
It does work. I stole Spartan Grown's reamendment recipe, and it fucking works real well. Like, so well with the peat base, the M3 recipe being reamended with some craft blend. Somebody else made what sounded like a craft blend. God, I wish I could remember who it was now. Patrick from Green Bicycles was talking about it, but or somebody else was talking about it
Down
last
to Earth
night.
has one. It's called what the fuck is it called? I can get the box. Hold on. It's like, I can't believe I can't think of the name of it. There's one that's called it's Bio. There's one that's called Biofish, but I don't have the fish one. I have the other one. Oh, Bio Live.
Live, yeah.
Yeah, but it's a similar product. It's not as good, I don't think, but
This one has like 40 things. Mendo Dope was one who was talking about it. It was on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle the other night. Shout out to fucking Talking Shit with Eagle. The organic takeover. I missaid that earlier. So it's not down to earth. It's somebody up there locally. They said it's like 40 or 50 things. They're like, it's what we would want to put in there with some extra shit, you know, like kelp karanja, neem, all like, I don't know if those are 3 that are actually in there. I could be mispronouncing it, but definitely check out the episode 1 of season 2 of fucking Talking Shit with Eagle with Mendo Dope, where they talk about it. Cause I think that it's working really well for them. They just dropped their, I can't even remember the name of the DVD now because they changed the name, but they are doing no-till now with their giant mounds, and they've been having great success. I followed their YouTube. Even with a fire this season, they put out huge, healthy plants. So what they're doing is working, and it's similar to the system that you and I are doing now. So it kind of gives me the belief that it's working for us, it's working for them. It's probably something that'll work for a lot of the people, and it's actually easier than sourcing a ton of different amendments, in my opinion. If you can just get like that one craft blend or whatever that has like a bunch of things in there, and then you can just use that, some worm castings, get it back going, you're on your way. Some gypsum a little bit. You can overdo gypsum, I'll say that for sure. Some people have gotten, Smiley actually may have been one of them, gotten their soil tested, and you don't want to go too heavy. A little bit, it just depends. Some people are heavy-handed and some people go really fucking light. So some people will be sprinkling it on with a salt shaker, and other people will do a handful. So it's just got to know how to figure out your amount that you're mixing up. Do you guys have any standard amounts? Like Aaron, I know you mix a lot of your own soil. Do you go by like the yard or gallon? Like, how do you typically calculate what you're going to be amending?
For me, I start with the cup. It's just like carpentry. You break everything down to the inches, but at the end of the day, I'm mixing yards, you know, and in terms of sourcing good soil these days, it's hard. There's not much available. So building is key. And I mean, we could do a whole nother episode on that, but yeah, I do have a lot of experience if you have a specific question.
I'm a metric guy myself.
Indeed.
What do you guys think?
Shit ton.
What do you guys think the
Tom.
plant uses the most of that you need to add the most back of to be
Nitrogen.
proper?
Brandon Russ says calcium, I think. Or he always complains about how much calcium is being taken out in the tests, and that the plants use tons and tons of calcium.
Yeah.
Yeah, his plants consume a lot of calcium, I think, because they're so active,
vigorous.
Say in a general garden, nitrogen, potassium, then calcium. You know, phosphorus is the last on the list, even behind all of the other minors.
I was going to say sulfur next. I was going to go right. I was agreeing with you as you're saying it, and I was going to say sulfur as my next one.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Obviously, it's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
You can't forget those.
Well, yeah.
Crystals.
Photon, yes.
Some people really are pushing hard on the crystals. The 22 gemstone mix. Shout out to Twisted Roots. He's all about the 22 gemstone mix. I'll say I fucking three grows in a row. Best plant was the one with the original crystal that I got. Probably some grower bias, but I went from like left plant in the room, middle plant in the room, right plant in the room. Each time changed the crystal spot, and it was always the best one. So shout out to lithium quartz. That's the one
Jack
use.
Jack Kemp I found it. I don't know how recent it was, but he kind of like went down the side rabbit hole, and he's like, you know, plants grow by using energy. It's not the nutrients, it's the energy that provided by those elements, NPK. And then he was saying how important paramagnetic
Paramagnetic
rocks was. And he says eventually everything is gonna. He thinks at some point in the future that we'll be looking at all these factors, but it'll be from a different angle of electron transfer and photon transfer and shit like that.
Smiley was talking about that earlier. I mean, with the sulfur question, he said it has to do with the electrons. And to be honest, that's still above my head. I've been trying to dig into it, learning about EH, the electro, like it's like the amount of hydrogen and electrons going on in the soil. There's like EH and pH. So that stuff, and like there's a redox potential in the soil and things like that. And Aaron the Grower, you had a story about the paramagnetic rock dust where somebody did a little experiment you could remind us about before, or after, I should say. Spartan Grown gives us his final thoughts and shout out because he's got to get going over to the Michigan Bros Grow Show here in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, thanks for this was getting good. I couldn't even pay attention to the chat. I was kind of captivated with this conversation. Thanks for the chat. Thanks for hanging out. Shout out to chat. Love hanging out with you guys too. Tried to get all the questions in. I don't know if we missed any, but we might have missed one or two. Sorry about that. And just growers love everybody and keep growing.
Later, Spartan.
Grower love, Spartan.
Peace out, Spartan. Good to see you, kid.
You can find him on Instagram at Spartan Grown. You can also email spartangrown@gmail.com and check out his commercial operation that he works at Mitten Canico. Spartan Grown's doing big things over there in Michigan. He also helps us out here each week being part of this panel. So we love and appreciate Spartan Grown. So big time grower love to him. Aaron, it's been a little while since I heard the story. I'm sure some of the people in the chat are new or have forgotten about it, but I think you had a little cool story about somebody who did like an experiment where they had paramagnetic rock dust and they didn't even put it in the pot. They like put it next to the pots or something like that. And
that's exactly right, Jack. Yeah, they put it in a bag, like a Ziploc bag, and sealed it and put it next to the pot on either side of I think it was a 1 gallon pot on either side. And then a pot outside of this electromagnetic field that couldn't potentially intercept this paramagnetivity. And they saw increased yield and increased biomass from this paramagnetic activity, from the suspected paramagnetic activity. I mean, science is wibbly with that kind of stuff, but it's really cool. And I'm not into, I don't know, crystals. There's probably something about the paramagnetivity that makes some of them, statistically significant in terms of like the yield or biomass of a plant. But Tao, I'm really curious to see how we think about this in the future, like electron transfer. That is where we're kind of heading with this paramagnetivity.
For me, it's radiation, which is kind of related, right? So like, especially for me, it's particularly relevant with regards to how insects and arthropods perceive the world visually. They got those big old, at least some of them have no eyes, or only like the ability to sense light, but the ability to tell different colors of light, different backgrounds and all that stuff, super important. And so herbivorous arthropods that use light to tell those things, that's very important. Another one that I was tagged in a lot in social media on Instagram was about using high frequency radio wave radiation as like a pest disruption thing. And so I've seen technologies that kind of try to exploit some sort of like wave or some sort of form or some sort of force for insect control, and having it not really work so well. Using it as a way to like cook things has been used already in agriculture, but that's a sort of a different kind of methodology. But I am interested because I do know that there's research that shows honeybees and bumblebees having cognitive problems and sort of other issues when they are exposed to high level radio waves. And I don't remember the values off the top of my head. I do have some posts on Instagram about it. But I think that there might be something to that. There might be some way to direct it, not only the radiation of radio waves, but also ultraviolet radiation, exploiting weaknesses in insect perception that way, or as an attractant or as a blind spot, as well as certain colors of the visible light spectra that we already know. So I'm kind of curious about that.
That's the main radiation right there.
And sonic vibrations for that matter. That's another interesting thing. that I think could have some broad scale effects, but I'm just curious about how we would quantify that.
Well, one thing that we do know how to quantify pretty well is the radiation that's measured in PAR, or photosynthetically active radiation, which is the wavelength of light that the plants are using to grow, that 400 to 700 nanometer. There's an argument that 730 and other things like the BPAR are usable as well, but I find it interesting that we started this conversation talking about light, and we're finishing it talking about light. So I'm going to go a little bit in the reverse order this time and give Dr. MJ his chance to plug anything that he's got coming on and going up. So
Yeah,
Doc, thank you for
speaking of
joining us.
light, I'm giving away a big giant light, the Grower's Choice ROI E720. There's like 28 people right now, or not even people, but 28 strain reviews that qualified for this. So the odds of winning, I mean, this is like $1,100 light, and you could be like one of 30, maybe 40 people to win this. All you got to do is write a strain review on our strain review forum. What's that?
That's pretty good chances.
That's very good.
Yeah, I mean,
Shit.
I think that cost of entry is just, a strain review. We've gotten some really cool strain reviews out of this too. So I'm appreciating everybody's efforts in writing those and in sort of building out our library. And now we're going to give away this big light on the first. So you can write your strain reviews for the next couple of days and still get in this giveaway. We're also signing up for the Spring Autoflower Challenge, which begins in April 20th, 420. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of prizes, we're doing it based on the size of your grow. So we have different groups set up based on the size of your grow. And yeah, I think the Spring Autoflower Challenge is always fun. We'll welcome photo period growers in that too. So head over to Coco for Cannabis and sign up for these things and write your strain reviews. And really enjoyed getting to talk about lights, getting to listen to you guys about paramagnetism and other issues. Enjoy the show every time I get to be here. So thank you to Jack for doing this every week. Thanks to the panel. Thanks to the chatters and all the Coco for Cannabis community that comes every week. Grower love, everyone.
Thanks again for joining us, Grow Love, Dr. MJ. I wanted to make a comment that I forgot to say earlier about light, as you're giving away a beautiful one to somebody who puts in that strain review, which, by the way, $1,100 light, you've got less 1 in 30 odds pretty much, or better at this point. I'm sure a few people will hopefully go and write one. So if that takes you an hour to do, anybody out there, if you end up winning, the potential is you save yourself in 1 hour of work $1,100, and you have yourself a badass light for a few years. So
is it the best review?
Many years.
An economist would calculate the value of the chance is just the value of the prize divided by the number of chances. So if there's only 30, I mean, what is that? Like a $45, $50 ticket or whatever at this point. So yeah, write a strain review.
Definitely worth it. And I wanted to give Kevin Jodry some credit, because one thing he said that interested me about light was that light is kind of like communicating to the plant through its spectrum. And I've played around a little bit with different spectrums growing cannabis plants and seeing how it can, adding blue can bring on more purples and more terpenes. There's been some research to show that I've quoted on my page, if you look at the save stories under the light that I DIY'd. But yeah, there's definitely tons of cool stuff and information about light out there that we do know about all sorts of plants that applies to cannabis. And I've personally firsthand seen running just like a white light versus a white light with red and blue additions and how that can impact the growth. So a lot of interesting stuff that we can get into in the future and bring back up. And thank everybody for coming. I want to give Aaron the Grower next the opportunity to give his final thoughts and shout out.
Thank you, Jack, and panel and chat. Although I wasn't available for the chat today, I got a trim bin in front of me. I'm doubling up all my work these days. But that said, it's really nice to be here. It's always a pleasure to learn from you guys. I have a lot to learn about LEDs, which I'll be doing from Doc this week. Go ahead and check out atgacres.com if you want to learn more about what I have going on. ATG Acres on Instagram. I am Aaron the Grower. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. And people out there, make sure you get you a plant packer. Best way to ship a clone for sure, in my opinion. So cool stuff. Aaron the Grower, thank you for joining us. Doc definitely has some awesome light information and reviews. The reviews are as unbiased as you can get, in my opinion. It's just hanging up the light, telling you how he's going to test it with a specific guideline, showing you the test, and then showing you all the information, like how much it pulls, what the output is. And it saves you a bunch of time of actually having to go through the test and doing it yourself. I don't believe that he has any biases. I think that he's doing a great job putting out tons of different lights from different companies and testing them all in the same setup. So anybody who has issue clearly is probably affiliated with one company or just wants to love on one company a bunch. So definitely check out his reviews, Aaron. They are top quality, and you'll learn a lot of really good stuff, especially, how well it will light up a particular grow space. I love the little charts and accurate PPFD reading. So thank you to
Much
Aaron
grower
and
love,
Doc.
Jack. Thank you very
Yeah,
much. I
thanks,
really
Jack.
appreciate that, man.
Thanks,
Big
Doc.
ups.
Thanks, Jack.
Next up, we have the American one.
Jack and panel, it was awesome talking. I love hearing everybody's take on all this stuff and learning a lot. And chat was really good. I'm in and out of chat. Thanks for showing up tonight, everyone. And yeah, I'm the American one. And I said my stuff at the beginning, no worries. So peace out. Everyone have a great night. That's all.
You got to remind them to have a cookie a day so they can live forever like you and reverse their aging
Go
process.
backwards. Yep.
That's what I like to
It's
hear.
true.
They say that the first person who's going to live to 150 or older is alive right now, and I think that person is the fucking American one, no doubt. The American one, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you. You can check him out on Instagram, the American one _with_ the Akeens underscores after the American one for all the words. Definitely check him out. He's got some really killer stuff. He's growing some of my Velvet Punch F2s. He'll definitely be getting hooked up with some Velvet Punch F3s, which are going to be ready in a week or two to harvest, not to send out or anything. They got to dry and cure and go through the germination testing at least. And I'm going to be growing them against the F2 and F3 side by side. So that'll be fun to do. I'm growing the American ones, Amy Aces right now. 7 for 7 germination. So can't beat that 100%. That's definitely something that I think matters a lot from a seed breeder and seed producer is the germination rate. I saw Nat from Humboldt Seed Company today had a post where just hundreds and hundreds of trays full of seeds that all popped. We were talking a little bit, I think last show, or maybe on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle. I can't even remember at this point, but about seed germination and what percentages people are getting and how long they wait and things like that. And he did a really cool seed germination tutorial. Check out Humboldt Seed Company on Instagram, him and his daughter, which he's been like carrying through cannabis fields and her like on his backpack when she was a baby. Now she's like a young adult and helping him produce content, and they show how to germinate seeds inside. So good little tutorial. But he also said like if you can achieve 95% germination, that's like incredibly successful in any agricultural crop. And maybe Doc can correct me on that if that's not true, but I think that's a pretty high germination rate. 95% is pretty solid. So for the American one, I know it was only a 7 seed sample, but 100% always a good sign. Really looking forward to growing those out alongside some of the Donnie Burger, which did not have 100% germinate and costed a pretty penny. So we'll see if we find some females. We're gonna get them tested, sex tested at Farmer Freeman, Easy XY. He's a cool dude, cannabis grower himself. So if you need gender testing for your seedlings, if you're growing regs, check him out. There's a bunch of other people that do that service, but I've personally used them firsthand. I think the price is fair and has done a really good job and 100% accurate every time. Matthew Gates, you are the final one. I rambled on long enough through these shout outs to get us close to 6 o'clock here. So you could give your final thoughts and shout out.
I have to agree with the people in the chat. I really enjoyed the eclectic conversation that we had in the chat, and the various conversations, the questions that we had were pretty good. If you want to learn more about integrated pest management information, I've been pretty busy and active lately. Like I said earlier, I am now currently a staff writer at Skunk magazine, which is a pretty cool situation, and I appreciate the congrats. I am also going to be trying to upload more information about integrated pest management on my YouTube channel, Zenthanol, which you can check out. Hopefully that you do. And as well, I'll have information on my Instagram as always, as well as on Twitter at SyncAngel. And I am working currently with Saigo International, which is a hemp cultivation group. They are trying to grow cannabis in a very sustainable manner in Southern California. And I'm excited to work with the local ecology in order to achieve that objective.
I love
And
to
we
hear
just
that.
got, let me jump in here. We just got a bunch of stuff from Matthew. So we're going to try to load that up and we might have his little IPM guide published this week. We'll see.
Excellent.
I talked to Matthew about that, but I'm getting very close and excited about it.
Ooh, I appreciate it.
Happy to hear that on both fronts, both the content side and the Saigo International. It's cool to see that they're doing things with the environment in mind. I think as conscious as we can be cultivating moving forward, I think we can really be sort of the shining star to the rest of these other agricultural communities and show them that even at scale, which cannabis is getting larger and larger scale, that you can do things properly and make the world a better place through your farming or gardening. So big shout out to that. we're coming up to 6 o'clock. So it's just me here. I want to remind everybody to smash that thumbs up if you enjoyed this video so we can get this information out there to more growers just like you that are trying to learn about growing cannabis, better themselves through the plant, and just be a part of this community. There was 111 in the chat just a second ago. That's one of those angel numbers or whatever. I looked up and I saw it. So there was less likes than that. So do your part. If you're here for free, we're putting out this content here for you. Let us know that you like it, or you can smash that dislike if you don't like it. Let us know. I'm going to put some of the information in the title. Talked about grow lighting, talked about caregiving, and we also talked about the importance of sulfur and its role. Might add a few other things to the title if I can remember to do so, but crystals. But definitely thank you all for coming. I am at Jack Greenstock, as you can kind of see behind me here on Cannabuzz and on Instagram. You can find me at Jack_Greenstock on Twitter. You can email me, jackgreenstock47@gmail.com, if you're interested in getting a copy of 50 Strains of Green. The second edition is going to be printing by April 20 next month, and hope to be shipping those out to everybody who's got the pre-orders in. I'm going to be getting payments and addresses on April 1st, so that'll be moving forward here pretty soon. So thank you everybody who's already supported me with that, and anybody else who's interested, you can DM me or email me, whatever you want to do. Just let me know. Peace and love, everybody. Thank you all for coming. See you next week. Jack